Hi, my dear students of UPSC, HPSC, UGC NET, and all those state examinations of India where the students have taken English literature as their optional. Today, I am going to take a very important session on W.B. Yeats. Many a times the students ask me that, sir, Yeats is such a author and a poet that we are unable to understand it. It's very difficult. So today I am trying to make you a little bit secured regarding Yeats, because I'm going to take you the topic Yeats development as a poet. So always remember, my dear students, चाहे दुनिया में कोई भी एग्जाम हो, अगर आपका बेसिक्स नहीं ठीक है, if your pillars are not strong as far as history is concerned, the poets details are concerned, the background is concerned, with proper knowledge, you will not be able to get good marks in the UPSC or HPSC writing skills. So OSN Academy is a platform where you can excel with everything. So students of 2025-2026 are hereby told that the 2026 batch of the UPSC has started. They may join the classes, they may take the study material packet, they may also join the test series and answer writing for all the written examinations to be held in India. So let us start today. W.B. Yeats. Yeats. So today I am going to teach a very important topic, Yeats' development as a poet. It is always remembered that whenever we start any topic, any poet, it should be always taken into concern that how any dramatist, poet, novelist, he or she developed herself, himself as a poet, as a novelist, as a dramatist. So today I am going to take a session on this. So as far as Yeats is concerned, Yeats' own consciousness of his work was an architectural structure. Section fitting into section. Section fitting into section to clarify, to strengthen the total design. Political, occult, autobiographical, historical material was all carefully organized and reorganized as Yeats's master plan for his work evolved. You will find recurring mythological, imaginary, and living figures often paired as opposites, laced together a poetry and prose further unified by sets of interrelated images and symbols, themes and plots. Yeats's poetic career, as even I might have told earlier, is the history of modern poetry, which covers a span of 50 years from the 90s to the 30s, and his works have come down in basically the collections like the Wanderings of Oisin, the Countless Kathleen and various lyrics, the Wing Among the Reeds, the Shadowy Waters, In the Seven Woods, the Green Helmet, Responsibilities, the Wild Swans at Cool, Michael Roberts and the Dancer. Very important एक है The Tower, The Winding Stair, and एक है A Full Moon in March. So I just remember all these poems, these collections. If you write in your answer paper, it will really help you. And his early poetry is dominated by the style of Walter Pater and the pale romantics of the 90s, with the color, with the dreaminess of rosity, which is later infused with the Celtic Twilight and Irish mythology, mixed with magic, mixed with occultism. It is the poetry of escape into the land of the heart's desire, with a haunting rhythm and decorative drapery of strange symbolism calculated to produce a hypnotic effect. तो ये उसका लेवल था कि कैसे वो हिप्नोटिक इफेक्ट दे देता है W.B. Yeats को. That is why sometimes you people feel obscure, little bit very hard to understand because of so much of symbols. But yes, I will try to make it much easier to make you understand. But Yeats stepped out of this twilight world into the broad daylight of politics, of political affairs, connected with that Irish National Theatre. The person who was mainly responsible for this change, वो कौन था? आप याद कर ले होंगे, Modern. Practical political life meant trouble. After Lady Gregory's death, his life suffered a momentary shock. बहुत झटका लगा उसको. When his suit was rejected by Modern. जब Modern ने उसको reject कर दिया, he was very much taken aback. He married a medium through which he could communicate his ideas, which he finally systemized in his vision. Vision उसका एक वर्क है, एक प्रोज वर्क है, उसका नाम है विजन. एक बार यूजीसी नेट पे पूछा भी गया था, who wrote vision? लोगों ने गलत कर दिया था. But his life was now settled and calm, and public recognition was wide and included the Nobel Prize in 1923. The old man was lusty, though saddled with a decaying body. और कुछ लाइन्स आप लिख सकते हैं, मुझे भी एक दो लाइन याद है. Though I am old with wandering, though hollow lands and hilly lands, I will find out where she is gone and kiss her lips and take her hands and walk among long dappled grass and pluck till time and times are done, the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. The earlier poetry of Yeats kept to one general manner for some 15 years, from the middle 80s to the end of the century. The influence of pre-Raphaelites, followed by that of French symbolists and of Walter Pater, and by his association with Arthur Symonds and the Yellow Book group, brought him very close to the poets who embraced the theory of art for art's sake. Art for art's sake. And apart from this, basically as late as 1899, Yeats still believed that the true course was to liberate the arts from their age and from life. Yeats लिखता है, I believe, he wrote, that all men will more and more reject the opinion that poetry is a criticism of life and be more and more convinced that it is a revelation of hidden life. This is the quote unquote said by W.B. Yeats, जिसमें उसने कहा है I believe, और ये जो लाइन है उसकी ये कहना है कि ऐसा हमें विश्वास है. But with the new century, a change soon came in his ideas and his poetry. 1906 की बात बताऊं, in 1906, he wrote that surely the idea of culture expressed by Pater can only create feminine souls. He was influenced by his friendship with the poet and dramatist जिसका नाम है Synge, Synge, who in 1908 expressed his view of poetry thus in the preface to his poems. और क्या लिखा? The poetry of exaltation will be always the highest, but when men lose their poetic feeling for ordinary life and cannot write poetry is likely to lose their strength of exaltation. And in these days, poetry is usually a flower of evil or good, but it is the timber of poetry that wears most surely, and there is no timber that has not strong roots among the clay and worms. He did not publish much poetry in the first decade, giving himself mainly to the drama. When the Green Helmet volume appeared in 1910, क्या मैंने नाम बताया वॉल्यूम का? ग्रीन हेलमेट. ये जब वॉल्यूम आया 1910 में, he was well on the way to being a different poet, now acknowledging the moral element in poetry and the need for the arts to be accepted into the social order and become a part of life. Inwardly, he was distressed in a deeper way than before, having found bitterness and disillusion both in love and in politics, which for him had been an inseparable experience, for she whom he had loved in the old highway of love, Maud Gone, had led him into those tortured politics. He still pursued the old high and hard path of art, but with a spirit distracted by the seeming needs of my full-driven land, and a heart vexed by the fickle, willful, and ignorant audiences of the Abbey Theatre, and called by the timid breath of commercialization to contempt of the approaching time when all things at one common level lie. However, Yeats was also beginning that pruning of his earlier poetry. Pruning समझते हैं आप? काट छाट. जैसे माली किसी गार्डन की प्रूनिंग करता है अपने औजार से. So Yeats also started beginning that pruning of his earlier poetry that has taken some of his dreaminess from it in the text we are reading today. His emergence from the dreamland of Irish myth and folklore and his increasing involvement in practical affairs meant the maturing of his personality, which is clearly reflected in the tightened and the chastened density of his style. Responsibly, Ties of 1914 was something of a resting place. Yeats अब तक 50 साल का हो चुका था, now nearly 50, had stepped into his new world, and that world in Ireland as in Europe was still at peace, and so with reservations was Yeats. So यहाँ पे क्या है कि he was becoming more and more into the philosophy. His philosophical poem जिसका नाम है The Dolls, through its allegory of the indignation of the dolls when the doll maker's wife had a baby, expressed the two poles from one to the other, of which Yeats continued to be drawn, the ideal of the unbreakable serenity of artifice and the fact of the crude warmth of life. But now he seemed to move more towards life. At any rate, he had left that fairyland. Bitterly he lamented in September 1913 that romantic Ireland's dead and gone. जो romantic Ireland था वो अब dead है, वो अब चला गया है. और एक poem है जो मैंने नाम भी लिया था, The Wild Swan Set Cool. In its title poem evokes a very clear image of those brilliant creatures, unvaried, still mysterious, so beautiful, ever to delight the men's eyes. But it is 1919 and his heart is sore. This volume came 3 years after the Easter Rising. The unleashing of the violence made a deep impression on Yeats. He had not accepted it from the dull faces as he had seen them. And in the coming following years, many notable poems arose from his brooding upon the bloody violence of what? Of that civil war. And yes, in the second coming, the power of seer came upon him, and he prophesied the dawn of an evil age. The horrors of these dragon days weighed upon, but did not depress him. So this was the entire system. And if we talk about his later volumes, of which the Tower of 1928, the Winding Stair of 1933 probably contain his finest achievement, All is Proud but All is Not Violent. It was in 1919 that his daughter, radical innocence, housed in custom and ceremony and free from hatred, the proud magnificence of Byzantium, and sailing to Byzantium seems to declare that he has finally rejected the sensual music for the artifice of eternity. And if you remember, in Among Children, as a 60-year-old smiling public man, his heart is driven wild when the image of her whom he had loved so long ago swims vividly into his mind, but his complex feelings issue in the eternal question. और वो question क्या है? How can we know the dancer from the dancer? How know the soul apart from the body, without which we have never known it or even know what is soul and which is body? So philosophical questions tease his ever questioning mind. There is a war of Dante driven to build in his worship of Beatrice, a Dante quite other than he whom his friends knew, but in other moods, not all the perfection of art, neither philosophy nor knowledge could command its. And so, if we talk about in his prayer for old age, he prays to be guarded from those thoughts men think in the mind alone. And this is actually, the entire, description, or it can be used for anything if you are a career-oriented aspirant to be written for W.B. Yeats. Fine. Now, the second topic which I am going to take is Yeats as a